2022 Telepass Milan Marathon. This is Jeff Whiteman here. The coverage of the 20th edition, returning to a mass participation format for the first time in 3 years. Various events that are taking place. 2021 event, which was the limited edition, elite only event, yielded the fastest men's marathon time in the world in 2021 for Titus Kibrutto, the only man to go under 2 hours and 3 minutes in the world in 2021. High hopes as the masses return, and you can see that the weather conditions, well, pretty good for running, 6 degrees and light winds. A little chilly for spectating, maybe. You see many people wearing thick coats, including the police outriders there. This is Jeff Whiteman with you, looking ahead to this return to what will be the host Winter Olympic city at the Winter Olympic Games of 2022, Milan Cortina. There have been young athletes events. There is a corporate relay within this format as well. So eager anticipation as we return to what is close to being the traditional course for this event. Last time it was on a 5-lap route for the elites only. And it is a beautiful city, combining the best of ancient architecture and modern design classics as well. If you are a destination marathon runner watching this, then add Milan to your bucket list, because it's flat and fast, and the course takes in all of the great sights around the city centre. And we'll pick up on some of those great venues as the race gets underway. Nice aerial shot. That's not today. It is a little bit cooler today, 6 degrees, rising to about 7. But the good news for the runners is very light winds and no prospect of rain or any kind of precipitation. The San Siro Stadium, home to both AC Milan and Inter Milan, is the furthest point, more or less, on the course. Let's have a quick spin round the route, which does take in a huge number of classical attractions and modern attractions. The Peace Arch there, celebrating peace in Europe after the Treaty of Vienna. And plenty of twists and turns. Any spectator that knows where they are would be able to see their runner 2 or 3 times. The dome there is at a relatively early stage the most famous opera house in the world, the Castello Forseco. And then the course starts to move away from the old part of the city centre. This is something more contemporary. City Life is a new development of dwellings, environmentally friendly entertainment, offices and apartments. The Hippodrome, of course, another horse racing venue. This is a particularly sporty part of town. The Stadio Giuseppe Meazza, the San Siro football stadium, and we're almost approaching the far point of the course, after which the competitors, you can see, approaching 30 kilometres, have only got 12 kilometres left as they make the return run past the Parco di Putello, retracing their steps in part, but coming back towards the same start-finish area at the Porto Venezio in the ancient part of the town. So it looks very simple, doesn't it, on a graphic? 42.2 kilometres. There it is. What does that resemble? Is that a rampant lion or a dragon, something of that kind? It's not a technical course because there's no particular twists and turns in there, but you don't also see the next 5 kilometres running in a straight line. That's the elite men's field. There's 6 men there who've broken 2:07. I notice quite a number of Eritrean flags already assembled at the finish area, and it's one lone Eritrean, I think, in the men's race, but very well supported. Vivienne Kipligant has the honour of being the #1 seed in the women's event, the 2-time champion, the winner in 2018 and 2019. but she will have her hands full. I think she's asked for a pace that gives her a chance of the course record, that 2:19 clocking, which was also an Italian all-comers record, as it was in both the men's and the women's events a year ago. So the starts for the masses will be in waves over the next 30 minutes or so to accommodate all 7,000 entrants. It's the elite men and women that will get away simultaneously. 9 o'clock local time. And they are taking their time discarding the tops because it is chilly out there. So keeping on. Well, you can see 1 or 2 runners still with t-shirts under their racing singlets. Most of the elites on this left-hand side. There's a number of pacemakers. The task for them is 60-50 or 61 minutes. I beg your pardon, 61-50, 62 minutes for the men and 69.5 to 70 minutes to halfway in the women's event. Walalen in the middle there in the orange singlet. Not the fastest in the field on marathon times, but he has incredible potential based on his half marathon performances, and we'll talk about those a little bit once we get underway. It's a very, very flat course. That's one of the reasons why historically it's so quick. It is a still day. It's a very slightly modified course against the 2019 version as we return to the mass format. Just 1 or 2 tweaks, still maintaining the accurate distance, but essentially the same out and back shape that we went through on the graphic just a couple of minutes ago. So those course records, I think the men's will be a very tall order. 2:19.35 is possible in the women's. That's the target time that was set a year ago by Howard Gebrikidin of Ethiopia. This race was in May last year on that multi-lap course, and there was real delight at sub 2:03 clocking for Titus Kibrutto. I don't think anybody at that point thought that that would last the whole year. There's Andrea Basso in the centre of the shot, the race director, just making sure everything's in order. The athletes behind those timing chip mats will activate the timing sensors. It used to be attached to the runner's shoelaces in the chip form. They're now embedded within the bibs on the front of their singlets. Yeah, 2:02.57 ended up being the fastest time in the world last year on the men's side. The women's winning time was the 8th fastest time and one of relatively few sub 2:20 clockings for Gebrikidin in the women's title here a year ago. And Milan emphasising its green credentials. This is seeking to become a carbon neutral event. Lots of initiatives that are environmentally friendly across the whole of Marathon Week. So lots of recycling, lots of petrol-free vehicles being used, all sorts of measures being taken to be as environmentally friendly and mass participation. So we are off. We are up and running for the 2022 Telepass Milan Marathon. You can see the Eritrean flags waving on the left-hand side. And a great moment because Northern Italy was at the heart of the first of the lockdowns in the pandemic. In March of 2020, the event that year was one of the first to be cancelled. And it has been a long 3 years, but mass participation marathoning is back in a city that really loves it. So I think it's 3 or 4 waves. We'll see probably between 2,500 and 3,000 get underway in this first wave. These will be those predicting quicker times. At the elite end, that will be the runners who run under 2:07, but all the way back to sub 3-hour runners. And that's our first look at the pacemakers, whose job is to hit the halfway point, looks as though they're all wearing those matching blue singlets in just under 62 minutes, ideally. So a big responsibility on their shoulders, not only to hit the time, but also to take the runners with them. It's no use them hitting it exactly if the runners are hanging back 100 metres further back down the road. So let's see how it's looking. It's just starting to gather into an arrowhead formation, but we're only approaching 2 minutes into the race. And the women have male pacemakers as well, tasked with taking them through just under 70 minutes. That's quite an aggressive pacemaking target, with the course record from last year as their primary aim. And I think Vivienne Kipligant has said at the press conferences early this week that she hopes to attack that time of 2:19:35. Welcome along if you're just joining us. This is Jeff Whiteman with the web stream at the 2022 Telepass Milan Marathon. Every chance in the men's event that we could have a new winner. In the women's event, the favourite has won the event twice in the last 3 years. And Kipligant is the hot favourite. In the men's event, well, Walalen, I mentioned him on the start line. He's just to the back of that group in the orange singlets. But he has a World Half Marathon bronze medal at 59.08, and he ran in the RAK half marathon, Ras Al Khaimah half marathon in United Arab Emirates in 58.40 earlier this year. So huge potential over the marathon distance, but he's got 6 or 7 people quicker than him in this lineup over the marathon. There we're looking at a replay of the start as the floodgates open. There is Italian interest in the men's event. Making his debut will be Elias Aioni. Seen a fair bit of him over the cross-country season. He's the national 10,000 metre champion. So just taking roll call on this one. Kibet on the front of the singlet is Daniel Kipkori Kibet. 58.45 marathon. I think that's him closest to the camera in the orange singlets. So these three are in a sort of diagonal formation. The ideal formation really for pacemakers is a flying wedge, like an arrowhead, a point between the three of them. We saw lots of the aerodynamic ideal positions for marathon pacemaking when Eliud Kipchoge ran that sub-2-hour endeavour in Venice. They want to, well, there's not much breeze there, but they want to create a windbreak so far as possible. So that's it. In line, 3 abreast, and the runners forming up behind them. We won't get a significant checkpoint in terms of pace times until around about 5 kilometres, so another 10 minutes or so from now. So Kibet's there. Kiprop is Henry Kiprop, 2:10 runner, so he's set off with serious intent. And I'll just draw your attention to the runner in the black singlet at the back there, Simbu of Tanzania. He was 7th in the Tokyo Olympics. There are plenty of runners who run quicker than him in this lineup, but he had an outstanding 2021. And if you were looking for somebody without a particularly quick time at the moment, the 30-year-old Tanzanian in the black singlet, running in about 5th or 6th place there, would be somebody to look out for. And already this leading group starting to get away as we get that runner's eye view, all of the single-digit bib numbers. Athlete closest to us is Bernard Kipkemoy in the pink singlet. Number 3 is Getahun Ayili of Ethiopia. So very roughly, the organisers would expect the athletes to finish close to the seeded order. The lower the bib number, the higher they're expected to do. And the honour of number 1, as you can see in the middle there, goes to Walalen of Ethiopia. I remember doing the live stream last autumn for the Copenhagen Half Marathon, and he won an absolutely pulsating duel by just 2 seconds in a super fast time. So if it comes down to the closing stages, he will be significant. This is the women's group with male pacemakers, and you can see it's low digits, albeit 1-0, followed by those single low digits. So just starting to take shape as they go through the 2 kilometre point. A long, long way to go, 40 kilometres still to run. The hot favourite in the women's event is the 2-time champion, Vivienne Kipligant of Kenya. The nationalities that are represented in that leading men's pack: Kenya, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Italy and Tanzania. I'm just looking at whether we can see number 13. That is one of the European contenders. That is Integrale from Turkey. He may be, as a 2:13 marathon runner, already just sitting back off this quick early pace. The key is to just let the kilometres unfold, be relaxed, be in the group, be doing the minimum amount of effort until the racing begins in earnest in the second half of the race. So just find a nice, easy, comfortable position in that group. Nobody getting in your way or likely to clip your heels. I don't know how much fluid they'll be taking on board today. It's part of the energy release process, but it is a very, very cool day. So heat and heat dissipation won't be so much of an issue. On the split screen, you can see the men in quite a wide pack, 4 or 5 wide. The women already narrowed down to 2 abreast. And it is the woman who said she would attack the course record, Vivienne Kipligant, now already 5 or 6 metres clear of that chasing group. And she has won this event twice, so she knows exactly what she's doing, and she knows this mass course, the big loop in particular. She didn't take part last year when it was a special edition invited elite fielder. This is the era of the super shoes. The height of those racing shoes now limited to 40 millimetres, as the cushioning and the carbon fibre technology has taken marathon running into new territory. 2:10 used to be a great time in marathoning as recently as 5-10 years ago. Now really that has become a 2:06, 2:07, and there are 7 men in this lineup capable of going quicker than that. So already we're keying in on Kipligant. Her best is 2:21. She ran that in Abu Dhabi in 2019. It was a great year for her, winning here as well. Never actually broken 2:20, so that pace that she's after will be a pace that she's never accomplished before. Now 30 years of age. And you can see just behind, it's not that big a gap. It looked like she was opening up. That camera angle from over the shoulder looked like she was getting away, but not yet. Just to name check some of these pacemakers. There's a whole phalanx of pacemakers. There is a Ugandan in there, that's Andrew Rotich Kwemoy, Emmanuel Saina of Kenya, Samuel Kosgei of Kenya, Cornelius Kipligant of Kenya, Jeffrey Piego, I've seen him perform this task well in the past, and Titus Kibrutto of Kenya. Those are the primary pacemakers, those are the athletes in the blue singlets. We're not expecting them to go the distance, so when their duties are done, probably somewhere just beyond the halfway point, you'd expect them to step off, but it has become a trend to see pacemakers stay in. We saw it just a couple of weeks ago, if you were joining us on the live stream of the Rome Ostia half marathon. Pacemaker there did a great job to halfway, but then stayed in, and I think finished 5th or 6th overall in the race. So got presumably his pacemaking fee and also some prize money. So they're clipping along nicely. We're through the first 10 minutes of the race. The first intermediate checkpoint that will have any meaning will be at 5 kilometres, hoping for something round about maybe 14:40 there, so 4 minutes away from the 5 kilometre checkpoint. And what you're looking for really in these leading contenders would be complete relaxation, no stress, no anxiety, no concern, just in the zone, clicking off the kilometres and finding a rhythm, getting themselves established. This is the leading Italian contender that we're looking at here. And I think he's a fair way back on his debut, Ilias Aouni. Well raced this year. I remember covering the Campaccio cross-country where he finished 8th. He was also runner-up in the cross-country IAAF or World Athletics Gold Series event in Northern Ireland. So that's him in the blue. No number on the back of the athlete alongside him, which looked like an Italian club singlet. And this, already you can say, probably the women's champion is going to come from this picture that we have here. It includes, I think, 6, maybe 7 of the leading women. Pacemakers are sprinkled between them, but they're already much closer to single file as the timing car comes alongside. 106 closest to us is Atelgargi Anmut of Ethiopia. The decisions that these elite athletes have to take is, if this is slightly quicker than they were anticipating and they feel like they need to drop back a little bit just to settle into a more comfortable rhythm, well, what do they drop back to? Because it looks like it's a big gap. You can see number 3 there almost sprinting. That's Getahun of Ethiopia, just to get back on terms. I don't know what's happened there, whether he's had a trip or something, but it looks as though there's some urgency to the Ethiopians running there. He was 6th in the World Half Marathon in Valencia, but he finds himself adrift, and it looks like he's working very, very hard to get back on terms with that leading men's group. He's a 2:05.28 man. I think that makes him the 2nd fastest in the lineup, but for whatever reason, he hasn't covered the opening break, and if he's surging to now redress that, he may pay a price for that. So this camera is a bespoke camera for the Italian challenge in the men's event. Aouni on his debut, and he will be very grateful for that pacemaking support that he's getting. Just one pacemaker to help him. I would guess he's looking for something more like 2:07.28, which would be an exceptional debut and would give him certainly options. Anything under 2:11 could qualify him for the World Championships for Italy in Oregon in the summer. Well, this arch perhaps suggests the 5-kilometre intermediate point coming up. And if it is anywhere close to here, this is quick. The runners have to go across that sensor pad. That indicated perhaps that was the 5-kilometre point. And if they went through in 14:30, that is 2:02.20 pace. So they have gone out very, very quick. We saw the fastest time in the world last year here at 2:02.57. And at the moment, all of these athletes that you can see are running faster than that. Faster than anyone has run this year in the world. And for some, it could be a great day. For others, that could be a really high-risk strategy, especially if you come in as a 2:07, 2:08 racer. The women will be a little bit further back down the road. There we are. There's their 5-kilometre checkpoint coming up. The target for them was a 2:19 time, so that would be something just the other side of 16 minutes at 5 kilometres. That men's group is starting to string out, and it's not a surprise when it's been that fast for the opening 5 kilometres. They've still got 37 kilometres to run, so the pacemakers, I think, are going a little bit quicker than anticipated. There's 3 of them. They're all Kenyans, so there'll be lots of chat. They're looking at their watches. They've got the lead car directly up ahead of them. But 1 or 2 people may find this starts to get quite uncomfortable now. Kibet, nearest the camera. Winner in Istanbul, number 9 on his back there. In fact, there are plenty of runners in this leading group who've won major marathons, so no fear in terms of being at the front of a race, but this will be a quicker intermediate split than they are used to. We haven't seen that many 2:02 marathons anywhere ever, so the women still in single file, and still not giving a yard is the pre-race favourite, the number 1 seed with number 101, Vivienne Kipligant. She actually pace made for Bridget Kosgei, the world record holder at last year's London Marathon, or rather at the 2020 London Marathon. 5th in Chicago last year, so she has some real great credentials. She's won 6 marathons, she's been runner-up twice. We cut back to the men's event. You can see Wallerlen there, the number 1 seed in the orange singlet, but he's the one, well, if you take out the pacemakers, he's back in about 7th or 8th place. So just perhaps reining it back a little bit. But as we look to the gap behind this leading group, it's a long way back to the chasers. So it's okay saying they're going too quick. But if you back off, you're running on your own, potentially. Just looking at the faces there, 1 or 2 working, including the pacemakers, perhaps a bit harder than they should be. Less than 20 minutes into a 2-hour race. Kiprop, Henry Kiprop, covered everything so far. The names of East African athletes, they're not conventional first name, middle name, surname in the way that we would style them in Europe. There is all sorts of patronyms and family names. So sometimes the bib name, which we would expect to have the surname on it, is the middle name in the way that they're referenced. So for example, Amdi Work Wallerlen Tedes has Wallerlen on his bib, and you can see him just on the extreme right of that shot in the orange singlet. Clement Langat is another of the athletes in that leading group, also going well, 30 years of age. We go back to the women. They are now through 5 kilometres. And right from the start, the women's race has been much more spaced out, much more single file. Looks as though just 5 women in that shot as we look at it. 103 closest to us was 15th here last year. That is Mekanen of Ethiopia. So Sambeta has been captioned as the chaser in this group. What's actually happening is that he's drifting off the back of that group. Nobody's getting away at the front, pacemakers controlling that. But over the next few kilometres, you expect to see 1 or 2 who are struggling at the back of that group come out of the back door and start to get isolated and drift away. And it's a long, long way to run on your own. Effectively an hour and 45 minutes solo. Still early on the streets, you can see some spectators out supporting the athletes. Ayani of Ethiopia, he was 4th in the Boston Marathon. Got a message from his manager, Malcolm Anderson of Moyo Sports, telling me a bit about him. He's progressed relentlessly. He may yet have a say in this race. He's running solo, but he's a very experienced marathon runner. If you read the book Out of Thin Air by Michael Crawley, which is a bestseller amongst running stories, an account of his year spent in Ethiopia, that athlete was one of the athletes that he spent a fair bit of time with. Sedet Abiji Ayana, and he's a 2:06 runner from Dubai. just given how fast it has gone off, if he's comfortable running like that, 60, 80, 90 metres behind the lead pack, there will be a few for him to pick off as the race unfolds, because unquestionably some of these athletes, not all, but some have gone out too fast. 2:02 when your lifetime best is 2:05 is quite risky. 12 closest to us is Sembeta, the Ethiopian, a 2:13 man. 2:13, so he's running at a pace potentially 10 minutes inside his lifetime best. I think sometimes it's very easy for new and established athletes to get carried away in the opening stages of that adrenaline surge that you get at the start of a major marathon. Helicopters overhead, huge crowds either side, motorcycle outriders. Pacemakers have a challenge now to control this and make sure they take the maximum number of runners with them through halfway in a on-target time. And a little bit of chaos as always as runners stop and zigzag and swerve to get their drinks bottles. You can see there, it's so often a feature of marathon running that if you prepared your drinks bottle, you're obsessed with grabbing your particular bottle, and that has broken up that leading group, and one or two will have to put on a spurt to get back in formation. A few shared drinks as well. Those are the prepared carbohydrate drinks that they'll have mixed up yesterday, and they'll have been kept in secure custody overnight and then put out on the course. They put little flags, flowers, ribbons on them to identify them. We're riding with Ayana again. A very, very experienced and improving marathon runner. He's taken that decision to run on his own at the pace that he thinks is appropriate, and you can see he can keep his eye on that leading group. One or two of them may well be coming back to him. Pacemaker in this women's group doing the hand signals to get them through these narrow corridors through the old part of town before they head out into the modern sectors and the outer city limits. Mekanen of Ethiopia at the back of that group. 102 is Chota Tusa, it will say on the front of her singlet, from Ethiopia. 5th in the New York Marathon. So we didn't get the women's 5 kilometre intermediate split, but I think the pacemaker there will be still on schedule for that sub 2:20 clocking. Still a long way to go, but for the women, the possibility of company for further into the race from the pacemakers and some of the other male athletes who are also targeting sub 2:20. You can see a group of 3 of them just up ahead in Italian and other club singlets. 10 kilometres will be the next intermediate time that we'll be looking for. For the men, if they maintain this current speed, then it could be around about 29 minutes or thereabouts at 10 kilometres. For the women, expect something closer to 33 minutes. So nothing to choose, and I think that's the leading. Is it a full house? 102, 101, 103, 104? Yes, very good seeding by the organisers at this point. Those are the athletes expected to fill the top 4 positions, and at the moment they're on schedule. It is Kipligant of Kenya, Tusa of Ethiopia, Mekanen of Ethiopia, and Beatrice Cheptu of Kenya is 104. It's just one pacemaker with responsibility for that elite women's field. You can see that equivalently in the men's event, when we go back to it, they have 3 athletes in the blue singlet doing that same pacemaking job, but you only need one person to tuck in behind. Here's one of the landmarks that are approaching, Piazza Gaia Aulenti. This part of Italy has had a history of high-rise building, spectacular skyscraper architecture, 231 metres at the sharp points, where the old meets the new. And if you've never been to Milan, this is the Castello Fossesco. That goes back to 15th century. It is a beautiful way to see it on foot, and many people making a weekend of it as we count down to Easter, families and friends accompanying them to Milan. Remember, we're into the 4-year countdown for Milan Cortina hosting the Winter Olympic Games in the first quarter of 2026. So it will be somewhat of a sporting focus for the whole world. And today it is the turn of the 2022 Telepass Milan Marathon, the 20th edition of marathon running in this city. That's the start-finish area awaiting the return run. 27 minutes into the race. We'll still have waves of runners setting off. 7,000, just under 7,000, taking part in all formats of road running this weekend. There are children's events, there are relays that cover the full marathon distance. And that will be the site that will greet the men's and women's champion, and then runners for the next 4 hours after that. The masses taking their time. Telepass, the sponsor, is involved in mobility around the country. I think it actually operates some of the toll plazas and autobahn highways around Italy. Brand new sponsor for 2022. Big initiative around being environmentally friendly. Some of the press conferences have accentuated Milan's wish to be at the forefront of those initiatives, to be greener, cleaner. The Run Green Milano Marathon was launched. Greater sustainability, lower CO2 emissions, more recycling. Essentially become carbon neutral, so a number of partners working with the organisers to help achieve that. The school marathon took place for the 6th year, and the Lenovo Relay Marathon, which is linked to the charity programme. And I think the Milan Marathon is second only to London Marathon in terms of the amount of charity fundraising that takes place per runner, so it's a serious element of the race as well. The spectators taking a picture of themselves on the giant screen alongside the finish area. Right now, we are still on schedule for a 2:02-2:03 men's finish, and still on schedule for a sub 2:20 women's finish. If that happened, it would be absolutely incredible. The odds are against it slightly, but the running conditions are good, and nobody expected the outcome that we had last year, which was that sub 2:03 clocking. So anything can happen. And it looks like we are still with 3 pacemakers in the men's event, but they're dotted around. They're not in that neat 3 in a line across the front of the men's race. I think they've gone through 10 kilometres now. That will have been at around about 29 flats. 29 minutes exactly projects to 2:02:20 as a finishing time. Running in between the tram lines here on the cobblestones, well, paving flags on this older part of town. Plenty of turns, none of them too severe, so a nice interesting course. Sometimes it can be very, very daunting if you can see your next 2 or 3 kilometres. That's one of the pacemakers stepped off. And this camera that is with Ayana may yet have an interesting element to tell in the unfolding story of this race, because he's not dropping back. This is a conscious decision that the Ethiopian has made to run at this speed, and it means that he's found his own rhythm. He's got quite a quick, short staccato stride, but he's a really experienced athlete, and he has got them still in his sights. There are no short twists and turns that take them away from him. Ayana, now 26 years of age. And his last marathon was Boston in the autumn, where he finished 4th. So he has experience at Abbott World Marathon Major level. So those were the 10-kilometre splits. It has slowed up a little, but still heading for a very quick time. Still close to 2:04, 2:04.20 or thereabouts as a potential finishing time. So the opening 5 kilometres perhaps was a little bit extravagant. They've now settled down to something that is more plausible for most of them, even those that have got 2:07 personal best coming into this. And you can see the result of that is that how many still in contention there. If we take out the pacemakers, would that leave 10, 11 athletes maybe in that leading group? They won't all have come up against each other, especially at the marathon distance. Just looking to see whether he had to ask for directions there, Ayana, as he came across that plaza. So they perhaps are 80, 90 metres away from him at the moment. So the 2 shots you're getting are the leaders in the men's event on the left-hand side, and then about 10 or 20 seconds back down the road, the athlete who will be in about 15th or so, Ayana of Ethiopia. The age range of that lead pack, the youngest is 23, the oldest is 30. The only debutant is the Italian, but not all have a lot of experience. Ayana, or rather Walalen in the middle there with the necklace around his neck. He's probably one of the least experienced, but he's got super speed in the closing stages. He's a 13:14 5-kilometre runner. And if you did watch last year's Copenhagen half marathon, it was an incredible finish. 2 seconds, and he came out on top in that. And it's because he's run so consistently either side of 59 minutes for half marathon that he has the #1 seed here. But he's got a lot of company, as you would expect, as they go through this contraflow section. The runners applauding on the other side, the masses who got underway in the early wave starts. And we still have 1, 2, 3 and 4 together in the women's race. Just looking to see whether they have gone through or approaching their 10-kilometre checkpoint. I think they'll just be through it. There it is. So they were, wow, 32:49. So they are at the moment sub 2:18. Incredible running. I wonder if there'll be a steadying up of that. There's the male pacemaker who stepped off. It's quite a cold day for him to be walking back, but he'll have a little bit of a wait for the broom wagon to pick him up. So we saw the men go through 5 kilometres very quick and then level up. The women still going very, very fast, and there's still 4 in contention at sub 2:18 pace. Pacemaker looking at his watch very regularly. I mean, the predicted pacemaking target was 69.5 minutes to around 70 minutes to halfway. Well, right now, they're way inside that. And still 4 of them. 1 pacemaker carrying that whole responsibility for that women's race. Looks as though Vivienne Kipligant has decided the pacemaker is for her. They're in the matching outfits. She's absolutely in stride with him, as you can see. They've been like that since the gun went. But the other 3, the most they've allowed that gap to open up is about 10 metres. It's never been more than that. So a great, great race shaping up on the women's side. And still, who are you picking in the men's event? That's at a more plausible time now. That's at around about a 2:04 time. It would be a lifetime best for everybody that's here if they can sustain it. But it's all about the win. Not too many of them have Abbott World Marathon Major experience. That's the Grand Slam of World Marathon running. So it is the World and Olympic Games plus London, New York, Boston, Chicago, Tokyo, and Berlin. This man has run recently in a World Marathon Major in Boston, where he was 4th in his last marathon out. This is Ayana. His singlet will say Abiji, I think. It's that. The full name is Sedat Abiji Ayana, 26 years of age. Here's his credentials. He's a 206 man, and he's operating inside 206. Now let's see as we come around the corner, can he see, trying to see how far back he is from those leaders. Now, as it straightens up, it's a left-hand turn coming up. So in this point of the course, where it's weaving its way out of the city, you will lose sight of that leading group. Nobody's losing sight of the leader here, though. A very fast women's race. You can see 2 for Kenya, 2 for Ethiopia. We go out into the parks in the more rural areas. We've come away from the city centre. They will head out towards the sporting quarter, San Siro, and then turn to make the return run back into Porto Venezia for the finish. The temperature is rising slightly. Nobody wearing gloves or long sleeve t-shirts or singlets. It's around about 6 degrees, rising to 7.5, 8 degrees at the finish. So for any that did race here a year ago, and I think in the women's event we had the 15th placer, it's a very different kind of challenge. 5 laps last year, and this is essentially one out and back wavy route from the centre of ancient Milan. So we're down to 1 pacemaker by the look of it in that blue singlet. And he's still got potentially another 20 minutes to take them. So if he steps off, everybody else that's in the lineup is going the full distance, and there will be decisions around what pace to run at. Just stringing out a little bit as they come around the turn. You can see there's around about 2 or 3 seconds between first and last. Just looking to see if anybody's missing. I mean, I suppose you could say Ayana is missing, but he is operating all on his own, about 30 or 40 seconds back down the road. Not too much conversation going on between them. Italian hopes with Awani. He will also be a bit further back down the road. This is one of the sharpest turns on the race. It will give them the chance to see what's behind, and it will also give Ayana, when he comes round the turn, a chance to see what the gap is that he needs to close. Let's just see how far down the contraflow before they see the Ethiopian coming the other way. Is that him on the other side now? I think that's the Italian, so he's around about a minute further back, and Ayana, who we may have missed on the other side there, could be within 30 seconds. Some of the modern skyscrapers up ahead there, you can see. Wonderful fusion of ancient and modern. City Life is part of the modern, another eco-friendly initiative created in the last few years. Apartments, restaurants, offices, entertainment, and those initiatives, including the way in which it's heated and are all designed to make it as green as possible. So they're just coming up to the City Life district now. We're not even at halfway yet, and there's just 1 pacemaker still in there for the elite men. So they will know that they're on schedule for 2:04, and nobody in that lineup has broken 2:06. So it's it's a new feature, I guess, the high risk nature of the first half. And runners these days, they don't fatigue as much. The shoes do a good job there, cushioning and protecting. On the right-hand side of the split screen, you can see a much smaller gathering at the head of the elite women's field. Just 4 of them, plus the male pacemaker there, compared to the 15 that you can see in that leading men's group. Well, we're just concentrating on the front of that group. And I've only seen, at the moment, them take on the one lot of fluids. That was about 20 minutes ago, just before the 10K point. Walalen is the #1 seed. Kibrutto is #2. And the athlete with 8 on his back there is Filmon, the Eritrean. He's the one where there's a huge welcoming party for him. The Eritrean expats around the world always support their athletes. Incredible scenes that we get, especially at cross-country races where they swarm onto the finishing funnel after their athletes finish. And he's the only Eritrean that I can see in either lineup in the elite fields. So that's him there, #8. Full name Ande Ukbamikul Filman, 24 years of age. 4th in Barcelona, a 2:06 man. So he's got a chance of winning this event. And at the moment, just biding his time at the back of that group. Kibet on the left-hand side at the front there. As we look at previous winners, Ikiru not present this year. We're likely to have a brand new champion because nobody in this leading group has featured as the winner in the last 6 years. Kibrutto, a steeplechaser in times gone by. Walalen. The longer the race goes on, the athlete on the right-hand side of the shot there, the Ethiopian, the longer it goes on, the more his speed comes into play. We've seen in half marathons that he can resist surges and still have enough left for his own sprint at the end. But that's mostly at the half marathon distance. The full marathon, well, he has achieved 2:07.48, but there's plenty in the lineup quicker than him. Kibrutto, there's his CV, the athlete closest to the camera. And this is Italian interest with Ioane, the national 10,000 metre champion, a 28-minute half marathon runner. And you can see he has his own pacemaker there. But he also has a challenge for the Italian #1 spot in this race. That athlete working pretty hard behind him in the club vest and with the... Just trying to see... So the men will be dearly wishing that that remaining pacemaker will stay there for at least another 15 minutes or so to the halfway point. Then the racing will begin in earnest. Then the decisions are made about increasing the pace, keeping it steady, or putting in a surge. Not all of those that we're looking at will finish. Some of them, can't tell from this angle because we're looking at them from behind. All you can see is the swaying of the shoulders and possible tension in the neck as a giveaway. But some of them are running at a pace that is 4, even 5 minutes quicker than they've ever done for a full marathon distance. And sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, sometimes it pays off, and sometimes it doesn't. So this is a roll of the dice, the outcome of which will be determined over the next half an hour or so. The halfway point is crucial. That's when we expect the pacemaker to step off, and that's when 1 or 2 people will be thinking, oh my goodness, I've got a half marathon to go. That applies all the way through the field in many respects. 15 closest to us is Bernard Kipligant, a 2:11 man, so he's one of those who is operating 5 or 6 minutes inside his lifetime best. Look at that, through the City Life area. Spectacular mirrored architecture. Little bit of sun expected later on, but a very smooth, nice sweep down through this underpass. And are those gaps opening up? I think they are, aren't they? That was a very tightly knit group about a kilometre back, and now there's 3 or 4 seconds between first and last, and we're looking at those with the high digits, 15 and 16. Kipligant and Langat of Kenya, the 2 Kenyans who've run outside 2 hours 10, now finding this a little bit hot to handle. Beautiful run through this cafeteria area. 1 or 2 people getting up from their Sunday morning coffees to cheer them on. And you can see the construction still continuing. 16 kilometres in, 21 kilometres will be the halfway point. So these nice, smooth boulevards, still relatively early morning, a few spectators out to cheer. You can see 1 or 2 on the balconies over to the left-hand side cheering on as well. Getahun on the right-hand side, just out of the shot there. The number 3 seed from Ethiopia. He looks like he's always been working hard to stay in touch with this group, and that goes back to the relatively early stages. This looks like a drink station coming up. You can expect a little bit of chaos as they lunge for their bespoke drinks, if that's what it is. Yes, here it is. Here's the chaos. Stopping. Going back. Walalen, the number 1 seed, going back for his drink. And that drops him from 2nd to 10th. And that will stress him as he tries to get back into his rhythm, all for the sake of a couple of swigs of fluid on a temperate day. Now, is this a gap opening up in the women's race? The 2-time champion, Kipligant. Has she got daylight? We'll only see when the camera pans back. Sneaks a little look. 30 years of age, she's actually the champion of 2018 and 2019 here. A 2:21 runner. And she's through 15 kilometers. Men's race, the key factor is going to be that pacemaker staying in. You can see Walalen, having lost his position momentarily, is now back where he wants to be. He's still swigging his drink, isn't he? Number 1 seed there, look. Drink in hand, sharing it out as well to his teammates. Good man. That's the camaraderie in marathon running. It's the distance that has to be conquered collectively first. Good spectator support on the far side of the carriageway there. I think they'll also see them on the return run of this section. So the men's race still projecting around about 2:04.5. The women's, incredibly, is under 2:18 at the moment. This looks like it could be going past the San Siro. I'm not sure if those gates are to the football stadium. They're only a few minutes away now from the turnaround point. It's not a straight line back to the city centre. It will weave in and out. Kibrutto there, closest the camera, looks particularly relaxed, doesn't he, the number 2 seed. Fourth in Rotterdam last year. There the women are heading down for that underpass area, the cafeterias in the City Life quarter. And it does look as though the double champion is getting away. Kipligant had very close company just a few minutes ago. And the camera bike is now in the position where those runners previously were, suggesting they drop back 10, 20 seconds or so. So she's not doing it on her own. She's getting great pace-making help, but it is, at the moment, a time 3-4 minutes quicker, potentially, than she's ever run in her life for a marathon. So it's a high-risk strategy for the 2-time champion. But she has won 6 marathons around the world in her career. Mexico, where she set the course record. Honolulu, Milan, and Abu Dhabi. So the pacemaker has gone, and the response is from the man who was looking most comfortable, Titus Kibrutto. Well, we've had a Titus who's won this race for the last couple of years, but that was Ikiru, and this is Titus Kibrutto putting in a bit of a surge. After the pacemakers have gone, that's his response, to go quicker. But he's doing a lot of looking over his shoulder. He's not a confident leader, is he, particularly? Asking the question of Daniel Kibet behind him, the Istanbul winner, the 2:06 man. And this is, I think, a secondary chasing group, because you'd say the first chaser is Ayana, somewhere in no man's land between the leading group and this one. But this one includes the Italian Awani. And I would guess at the moment he's projecting something around a 2:08, possibly 2:07. A long way to go yet, though. And much less chaos for the women's leader in taking her drink. Up front, Kibrutto almost can't help himself, can he? Leading, but looking back always. He needs to do one thing or the other. He needs to either run with his teammate or lead. And they have come back to him, so almost doing like a informal pacemaking role and asking a lot of questions. I think he needs to just look straight ahead and just run. Let the others take care of what they're doing. Wallalen, after his little drama where he had to cut across, that's him in 3rd place with the necklace. The number 1 seed, the half marathon star, the world bronze medalist, the winner of Copenhagen last year, on a sprint finish. And Simbu now starting to cover the move. 7th in the Olympic Games, the 7th placer there in the black singlet. He's also 5th in the Rio Olympic Marathon, so a real big-time operator, World Championship bronze medalist. Not the fastest in the field by any means at 2:07.50, but a great deal of experience for the man currently in 4th. And a few grimaces on there further down the field. Yursi of Ethiopia, the number 4 seed at the back of that group, a 2:06 man who finished 9th here a year ago. Titus Kibrutto, 25 years of age. 2:05.22, his best. The fastest man in the field. He's still doing a looking over his shoulder. But the impact that he's had is clear to see there. When the pacemaker stepped off, there were all 15 still in contention, and 3 or 4 of those at the back are now facing a bit of a crunch time as we near the halfway point. Well, it must be 5-6 seconds to the back marker there. So this is having an effect. It isn't taking Kibrutto clear, but he's knocking men out of the back of this leading group. Feels like he's accelerated since the pacemaker stepped off. Another drinks opportunity here. And he takes on-board fluid. So Kibrutto, the leader, beyond their personal drinks with those distinctive bottles, there are just regular bottles and cups of fluids. Wallerlen went for another drink there. Now, he carried his bottle for quite a long way up until a couple of minutes ago, so that can only be just a nervous reaction to not wanting to pass up on a drinks table, perhaps. It's part of the glycogen release process, the taking on board of fluid, so it's not just to do with heat and perspiration, but it also helps release the carbohydrates that have been stored over the previous couple of days. Moving well. Kibrutto, he's just got this restlessness about him, hasn't he? Where he's full of running and he just wants to hit his top gear. And when he looks at his watch, you'll see that he's not even yet halfway. The plan was for the pacemakers to take them to halfway in around about 61:50 to 62 minutes. They drifted slightly outside that, but I think this surging from Kibrutto, the number 2 seed, will bring them back closer to that. Wallerlen responding. Simbu responding in the black. And these guys at the back are responding, but it's all gone a bit single file. 11 is Langat of Kenya. 16 is also Langat. It's Elkanah Langat and Clement Langat. Elkanah on the right-hand side. 2:10 man. So if he can just hang in here, he's going to absolutely obliterate his lifetime best. Nice narrow corridor that they're going down now with the barriers on the right-hand side. Good crowd support. The crowds tell you how cold it still is with the scarves and the puffer jackets. 3 or 4 layers on. This is the first time that the marathon has been out to this part of the city since 2019. A couple of years of cancellation, then the limited edition, special edition, elite only race. There was a 5-lap park-based course last year. And here's the 2-time champion leading in the women's event. Vivienne Kipligant, 6 times a marathon winner around the world. 18 kilometers down, 24 kilometers still to go for her. Running as close as she can get to that male pacemaker just in front of her. So Kibrutto has been reabsorbed into that group. Still turning to his right, chatting. You can only assume he's feeling good. Here he goes again. Another little surge coming in. It's not the most efficient way of running a marathon, but it's whittling that leading group down from, well, we're now down to single figures, I think. Is that 9, maybe 10 athletes as we look at them head on? He just can't seem to stop himself wanting to move up into his top gear. We're about a minute or two now, 2 minutes perhaps, from the halfway point in this 2022 edition of the Milan Marathon, the first under the sponsorship of Telepass. 7,000 runners celebrating a return to mass running on the streets of Milan. And this is going to be the men's winner somewhere in this group, but who? Only half the story told so far. The pacemakers have gone. We had 3 at one point. We're now down to none. Those 3 athletes in the blue singlets earlier. Wallerlen in the orange in the center there with the necklace is the favorite. We've got a double Olympic top 6 placer in Simbu in the black singlet on the left-hand side of that group, including at the Tokyo Olympic Games. And we've got still 4 or 5 men who've run under 2:07, but everybody at the moment in that group heading for between 2:04 and 2:05 as a finishing time. Now Simbu hits the front for the first time. At 2:07, which is his quickest time, was run in Abu Dhabi. That nice relaxed action, arm staying close to his chest, big loping stride, and no tension at all on his face. Cruising at the moment. Time to just have a look, see who's still in contention, because there's some damage being done, but seemingly not to him. There's 21 kilometers, almost halfway. The halfway point is that arch, and it's going to be reached, well, in around 62:30. So we're on a 2:05 schedule, just under 2:05. That's the sensor mats there, so just outside 2:05. And for everybody that we're looking at, it would be a personal best. Nobody, well, Kibrutto has run 2:05.22. That's the athlete in second, so he's on schedule to match his lifetime best. Now we'll find out as we start the return run towards the old part of the city, who over-committed in the first half, and there will be some. So it's sub 3 minutes per kilometre. Those of you watching at home, if you set your gym treadmill to 3 minutes per kilometre, you'll get a sense of how quickly they're running here. Fantastic speed in the era of the super shoes. Don't forget, this event yielded the fastest time in the world last year in the men's event, 2:02.57 for Titus Kibrutto. But it wasn't on this circuit, it was on a 5-lapper close to where I'm sitting now at the finish line. Simbu running his own furrow on the left-hand side there in the black, the championship specialist. So it is Ethiopia against Kenya. We've also got Eritrea and Tanzania in that mix. And about a minute and a half at the last checkup, we've got the leading Italian contenders, including Awani, the national champion on his debut, the national 10,000 metre champion on his marathon debut. Walalen having a look around. His only anxiety has been those drink stations that have appeared, where he went for his own personalised drinks bottle, and then only a couple of kilometres later also went for water at one of the drink stations. That's him in second place with the shaved head. Nationalities there. It's Kenya 1, Ethiopia 2, Kenya 3, Ethiopia 4. This is that chasing group, and it's now been joined by Ayana, so he's slotted in with the leading Italian, and I think in terms of how far behind they are, it's about 90 seconds. It could be slightly less. Still with a pacemaker helping the pair of them, but for a long time it was Ayana running in no man's land on his own, so they've caught and reeled him in. But now they can cruise together as a 4, and just on some of the double backs they'll get an idea of what the gap is, and they will see the odd athlete drifting off the back of that group and coming back towards them at a much slower speed up front. Ayana is a 2:06 athlete, and I think these will be operating at around 2:07 pace. And of course for the Italian, Awani, he's never run a full marathon, so all he can reference it against is some of the shorter road races that he's done. A lot of hopes for him and his colleague, who doesn't have a number on his back, so I can't identify the second Italian in that group in the white singlets. It could be Vincenzo Agnello also making his debut. San Siro is the district in which the famous football stadium used by both Milan clubs is housed. And it's actually named for Geppi Miazza, who played for both teams, so that keeps it neutral on naming rights. Passed away a few years ago, and the stadium was named in his honour. 80,000, imagine that on a match day, that will really rock. Well, we said it was a runaway, and whatever that camera angle was, or whatever's happened, the second, third, fourth and fifth women are now back in contention. So the camera was slotted in between the first and second women. We didn't see the gap, but it looks as though they've got themselves back alongside her, and the question has to be asked whether Kipligant is going through a bad patch, because she was seemingly well clear, and suddenly we're back to a 5-woman race, and they've closed her right down as we approach the halfway point. Here it comes, just beyond that arch, so they are heading for still 2:17, still the course record. 21.1 kilometers is the exact halfway. The cyclist telling them to keep right because it's a contraflow section. And still they have those 2 male pacemakers. So the athletes that we're seeing for the first time, 106, Dargi, she's got Anmut on the front of her singlet. The Ethiopian who's run 2:29, she's massively inside that. And 105, Biini, also of Ethiopia, who's a 2:26 runner. So nobody in the women's field has ever broken 2:20, and suddenly we have a 2:18 in prospect, but a lot can happen. And a particular focus on what's happening to Kipligant, because she's surged clear and now she's been reeled in. You see 1 or 2 men from up ahead have dropped out and walking alongside them on the hard shoulder side of the racing line. So women's marathon running really is going into new territory. In the world last year, there was only 8 athletes who broke 2:20, and at the moment, we have 5 in this race who potentially could do exactly that. Up front in the men's event, it's still anybody's race. The pacemakers have all gone there, and the champion will come from in amongst this group. It's going to be an East African, but there are 4 nations potentially. Filman in the blue is the Eritrean in there. We've also got Ethiopia and Kenya, and the Tanzanian Simbu. Visually, it looks as though it's getting quicker. It looks as though there have been some surges. I mean, it is just tremendous turnover when you look at these athletes. If you didn't know it was a marathon, you'd think it was a track race, 5,000 meters or something, because they look like they're absolutely powering along. But for all the testers that have been put in, all the surges that have been made, not even the podium positions are still clear-cut. It will be a psychological boost to be on the second half of the race, but the third quarter, you suspect, will be the one that determines who's going to be the winner, who's going to make the podium, and who's dropping out, not even going to make the finish, even though they're in the leading pack right now. I think these two must be training partners because there's been a lot of conversation between them. There's Simbu now. He was leader just a couple of kilometers ago, and now he's second to last with number 10 on his back, or third to last. 11 there is Clement Langat, the 30-year-old, winner of Rome last year. And he's really got to grit his teeth and try and hang on, because the nearest thing behind him is that chasing group with the Italian and Ethiopian, and then behind that it would be the elite women. So it's a long and lonely run for anybody that gets dropped at this point, but that's what's happening. Elkanah Langat is number 16. 2:10 man, so the surges are having an impact at the back of the group. The title challengers are coming down to single figures. It was always going to be at this section of the race, after the pacemakers had gone, that individual athletes would have to decide whether they were going to put in any testing surges or even make a long run for home. That happened much sooner than expected, and it's been ongoing ever since. And once again, it is Kibrutto that has decided to just open up a little bit. Last time he kept looking back. In a way, if you make a surge, don't look back, because it gives the others clues that it might not be for real. He's a young man, only 25, a lot of racing experience, including on the track, on the country, and at the full marathon distance. Now, is this it? Is this his bid for glory? Because we now have about 8 seconds between first and last in that group. And it is Kibrutto doing all the damage, and he's not looking back, and he's not chatting, or is he? Wallerland, we saw him in Copenhagen do this. He covered every single move that was made. Spectacular racing in the closing stages of that half marathon. The question mark around him is over the full marathon distance. He's one of the world's great half marathon runners, great on the track. A world silver medalist as a junior, that's him. Amdewalk Wallerland, closest to the camera. A man for all seasons and all surfaces. But is he a man for all distances, in particular the top of the championship range, the marathon? So he's taken his foot off the gas again, Kibrutto. But it's still single file behind him through this park section of the course. Not so many spectators around here, a little bit quieter. Well, 12 is Sembetta. Tedeschi, a 2:13 man, 2:13. Projecting for a time around about 2:05, 8 minutes inside. Has he bitten off more than he can chew? Desperately trying to hang on. The Ethiopian. But that looks like the umbilical cord is being cut there, doesn't it? The elastic is going, he's drifting, and it will be a long, long, lonely run for him. And he'll be really hurting as well, because he's way inside his lifetime best. One of these is going to be the champion. This is the breakaway. Initiated again by Kibrutto. It hasn't won him the race, but it's cleared the field a little bit. We're down to 7. 9 alongside him. Daniel Kibet in the orange. A 2:06 man. Winner in Istanbul, so he knows how a marathon victory goes from here on in. But that's a lot of company and a great racing prospect. 8, Filman, the Eritrean. Simbu, 10 in the middle there, the double Olympian, top 10. Indicates out right. Oh, it's a drink station coming up. So often these can be unsettling of the rhythm. They're slowing, they're veering, everybody's taking a drink. Everybody's taking a drink. And look at what that did to that closely clustered pack. They're suddenly having to grab and go, drink, get it into their stomach. That can cause stitch as well. That's something they will have practiced in the build-up. You sometimes have to keep the drink in your mouth just to take any chill off it. Swallow in time with your breathing. Sembetta was the last to take his drink, and I wonder if he's regretting doing that at the back here, because it has cut him adrift, and he's got to increase his pace now to get back on terms. Meanwhile, in the women's, it's the same 5 athletes. Still, as she has throughout, the double champion here, Vivienne Kipligant, leading with the personal pacemaker. There's 2 male pacemakers in there, but I think she's had bigger gaps than that. But unlike in the men's event where Kibrutto keeps looking back, Kipligant, I've not seen her look back once to see who's there. You can see some shadows appearing, especially in that women's shot as the sun starts to rise. Still a cool day, we're approaching 8 degrees. Welcome along if you're just joining us on the web stream coverage of the Telepass Milano Marathon of 2022. It's the 20th edition of the race. This is Jeff Whiteman with you, and we have quite a contest brewing up. In the men's event, we're on around 2:05 pace, and there are still 7 in contention. In the women's, we're on an incredible 2:17 pace, and still 5 women running way quicker than they ever have in their lives. Wallerlen still looking comfortable with the beads around his neck. The #1 seed, the favourite, even though he's not the fastest. He's just an amazing half marathon runner, and he's particularly strong in the closing stages, and the others will know that. They won't want to leave it till then. And once again, it is Kibrutto at the front, just upping the pace very slightly, just checking to see who's coming with him, who's got it. Still more than 40 minutes of running to come. The race last year came down to the final kilometre. So often in major marathons it is only settled in the last 3 or 4 minutes or so. All of these athletes, barring perhaps Kibrutto, the fastest in the field, are on schedule for lifetime bests if they can hang in there. And it is a World Championship year. Selection for that, and the European Championships in Munich. They're in August. The World Championships are in Oregon in July. There'll be 1 or 2 athletes, especially for Italy and Tanzania and Eritrea, that will be having a look at that. The Kenyan team will be one of the hardest in the world to make for both men and women, to pick 3 per nation. So Sembetta, still the athlete at the back. He's re-engaged a couple of times, but he hasn't managed to get himself in the heart of that leading group. He's still 2 or 3 seconds behind the leader. And guess who the leader is? Yep, it's still Kibrutto. Still checking over his shoulder. When he looks back on this race, if he wins it, he'll reflect on this as being a decisive and wise part of his race. If he doesn't, he questioned the number of surges that he's put in, and you can see him frowning, sweating up a little bit now, the mouth agape, but the others are the same, so he's making them really pay for this now. Checks his watch, I'm not sure that will tell him anything significant. 80 minutes in. Last checkpoint showed 2:05 and bits as the likely finishing time. Possible that he has accelerated again. And this time Daniel Kibet, 6th in the RAC half marathon just a few weeks ago in 58:45. takes his turn at the front. In the women's event, nobody is allowed to have a turn. It is the pacemaker and Vivienne Kipligant, and that's it. That's how it's been since the gun went. So there's all this stuff going on behind her, with gaps opening up, gaps closing down, and nothing changes. She has her eyes fixed on the neck of her pacemaker in front. She's won this event twice. She's won 6 marathons around the world, and she's still leading. But Vivienne Kipligant of Kenya still has close company. Somebody there is not getting on the podium. Somebody is going to be the champion. And you can't really understate the benefit that the 2 male pacemakers are giving them here, because they're keeping this personal best time alive. The women, it's less chaotic when they go for their drinks. We haven't seen them when you shot the last couple of drink stations, but it's less congested, closer to single file. That's the position they've been in for now 80 minutes. Just absolutely like a tandem bike, isn't it? And these 4 have switched and swapped a little bit. I think they dropped back by anything up to 20 seconds at one point. We never got the reverse camera angle, so it's hard to tell. But when they were going through the city life area, it looked to all intents and purposes as if Kipligant had opened up a significant gap, but it was neutralised soon afterwards. Tusa of Ethiopia, Lima of Ethiopia, Cheptu of Kenya, Baini 105 from Ethiopia. Still 7 in contention in the men's race. Still the most vulnerable amongst them at the back of that group is Sembetta. It says Tedesse on his singlet. 2:13 athlete. So still operating at 2:57, 2:58 pace. There's no significant breeze on the course, so they're into a rhythm. It's just within individual kilometres. Mostly Kibrutto is just putting in slight surges that are taking him clear, but nothing that has really, well, there you can see, just slightly quicker, 1 second per kilometre quicker in this quarter of the race. So Walalen, the #1 seed, knows that they will fear him in the sprint finish. If he's there in the last 400 to 600 metres, he will be very, very hard to shake off. He's Ethiopian, the leading 2 are Kenyans. That's what's happening. They're trying to just edge away a little bit, and he's having none of it. Simbu for Tanzania in the black. The Olympic 5th placer from Tokyo still going well as well. And in the sky blue, the Eritrean, Filman, 2:06 man, also on schedule for a lifetime best. They all are. So the longer it goes on, the more it favours the track specialists, the half marathon specialists. Didn't go out to halfway ridiculously fast. By then it had calmed down. There was an opening 5 kilometres that, if the intermediate split was correct, was at around about 2:02 pace. But it's steadied up since then, and that's why we have such an enthralling race in prospect. Still difficult for Sembetta at the back there, the 2:13 man, running at 2:05 pace. Always in the ejector seat position, but somehow the tall figure still hanging on in there. Elkanah Langat is the tall runner in the black singlet, the Kenyan. He's a 2:10 man as well, so he's into uncharted waters. 29 kilometres completed, 13 kilometres to go. less than half an hour of running. There's no training run they do that will be less than half an hour. So they're into familiar realms. They're counting down rather than counting up. This is one of those long, straight sections. There's not many, but this is a dual carriageway, as you can see. If you're feeling good, it's a nice, wide, straight stretch of road. If you're feeling bad, it looks like infinity in the distance. And this is the chasing group. We don't know exactly how much further behind they are. And it's the first Italian. It is Awani making his debut in the blue closest to us. And Sedat Abidjiyana of Ethiopia is the athlete on the far side. He was fourth in Boston. He was running a very isolated race. These will be picking off athletes because some of those that we've seen drop back from this leading group will have dropped out of the race. So you may even find that chasing group is approaching the top 10 positions now, but they could be a minute and a half or 2 minutes back down the road. And guess who it is? Pushing on again. He's got no qualms whatsoever about leading. Kibrutto for Kenya. And it's usually Kibet that is his wingman on these occasions. Kibet's there on the far side in the orange singlet, but between them is the #1 seed Amdalem. And he's just grimacing a little bit there, isn't he? Walalen. Amdiwalk Walalen. He's one of the slower runners on marathon personal best in this leading group at 2:07:48. And is that the gap opening up again in the women's event? It looks as though it was. Looks as though Kipligant has surged clear as she did earlier in the race. She'll be hoping that this time it's decisive. In the men's race, still the 7 athletes in contention. And a drink station, which has always disrupted. And once again, are all of them taking a drink? Yes, they are. Struggling with the pickup technique with those open cups there. I think that was the Eritrean Filman who didn't take a drink. Sharing drinks between the leaders, 1 or 2 with 2 in their hands. So Vivienne Kipligant, we just got a glimpse of a gap that she'd opened up again. It's happened before and it's been closed down. She looks pretty effortless. She runs really close to that male pacemaker. You worry about just clipping a heel there, but they're pretty much in sync. She said at the press conference that she would target that women's course record. It's 2:19:35. At the moment, they're inside it, and at the moment, she's on course for a hat-trick of victories. Well, how many times have I said Sembetta in difficulty at the back of that group? Still cruising at 2:58, still projecting to around 2:05 as a winning time, but this is now much more about who's going to win this race. There's plenty of athletes there that aren't going to make the podium. There's 1 or 2 that won't make it to the finish line, and there's a champion in there, but who is it? Is it 10, the Olympic specialist? Is it 1, the debutante? Well, not the debutante, but the half marathon specialist. Will it be Kenya? Will it be Tanzania? Will it be Ethiopia? Will it be Eritrea? It looks like in the women's race it could be the twice champion. Let's see if we can check in on the gap behind Kipligant. She goes round this turn. Well, it's opened up, hasn't it? That's 5 or 6 seconds, and that's all happened in the last 2 kilometres or so. Is she on her way to glory again this time? And this is the chasing group, and they are picking up men coming off that lead group. So it's Awani of Italy and Abiji of Ethiopia, just starting to take some pickings from those that are falling off this leading group. And maybe they're not a minute and a half back down the road. Maybe they're closing slightly. Kibrutto hasn't yielded ground much since the pacemakers stepped off at around about 17, 18 kilometres. So generally speaking, he's been first or second. And it has whittled that leading group down to 7, but it hasn't got him clear, or Kibet. They're both looking at their watches. Athletes go through bad patches in marathons. They get stitch. You can see Wallerlen just grimacing a little bit there. But everybody has bad patches, but they have good patches as well. And it's when in the race those happen. If they can just sit in a group and ride out the difficult times when they're aching, going through discomfort. But Kibrutto's tactic has got to be to make them really feel it and drop back, to finally prize himself clear of this leading group, but it's not happening for him. And we're now coming into the last 30 odd minutes of this race. So two very different races in prospect. We have a clear lead now for Vivienne Kipligant, the double champion here, the winner on the two previous occasions when the race was held on this route in 2018 and 2019. She's opened up, but you could almost throw a blanket over these leading 7 in the men's race. And the pace has been relentless. We've seen individual little spurts of maybe 100, 200 meters or so, but overall throughout the race, the pace per kilometer hasn't varied too much, from 2:57 or 2:58 per kilometer for the men's race. And they're now approaching the final 10 kilometers of the race. Wallerlen was a World Junior medalist at 10,000 meters on the track going back to 2016. That's him in the center of the shot, the third of the orange singlets. But you can see he's grimacing. Now, I remember this from Copenhagen. He looked in a world of pain there in the half marathon distance and somehow hauled himself through it all and won on a sprint finish. So don't be deceived by the facial expressions of Wallerlen, because they sometimes belie the gears that he still has available to him, the change of gear in particular. So we're back in amongst the crowds. This will be very welcome to the athletes. 3/4 of the way through the 2022 Telepass Milan Marathon. Welcome along if you're just tuning in. This is Jeff Whiteman with you on the streets of Milan. The next Winter Olympic host city, Milan Cortina, took the flag from Beijing at the closing of the Winter Olympics last month and will be the host in 2026. So a very sporty city and a really great race in prospect here, because that's a lot of athletes to have still in contention at 2:05 and still by and large looking good. Some of the sections that they'll encounter on the return run will be the same as they ran on the way out. The finish line is adjacent to the start. There's been a few little refinements that have been made over the years. This is, strictly speaking, a new course because it's very slightly different than it was in 2018, to take in new areas and try and keep it quick. And as you can see, there are really no inclines in the course at all. It's pancake flat. Nobody wanting the regulation drinks bottles, although any time we get their personal drinks bottles, People have been charging for that. It's a judgment call at this point, because if they're doing it for energy release purposes, that takes time to have effect. So once you get into the last 10 or 15 minutes of the race, it's marginal as to whether the benefit of taking on water outweighs the disruption of going and grabbing it and losing your rhythm and getting detached from the leading group. So this is a little technical section of the course. Slower portion of the race. Sembita, I don't know if they surged again, the athlete at the back there, number 12, the Ethiopian, you sense that he's right on his limits now. He's responded so many times, but only to get himself back into that 7th position. And also it's no surprise that Elkanah Kiprop is finding it hard, because his listed personal best is 2:10.55, and right now he's 5 minutes inside that, so this will be really beginning to bite a little bit for him. And he's running very, very close to the edge of the water there, isn't he? You wouldn't want to just miss your footing there. Been on a YouTube clip forevermore. Well, the slowing down has really bunched it right up again through this weaving section, through the modern part of the city. Still the same order. And at that point, is it Kibrutto again up front? We're not going to get a head on because this is so narrow for the camera bike as we look at some of the modern architecture. From this runner's eye view, it looks as though he surged again out in front and opened up. In the women's race, she said she would attack 2:19.32, 2:19.35, the course record, and she's doing exactly that. Vivienne Kipligant has never run under 2:20. And she's, well, still only 10 seconds clear of a bunched group. So the competitiveness within that women's chasing group could yet bring them back into contention. But now we're very much single file. So that twisty-turny section through the park has given, I think, Kibrutto the opportunity to really put his pedal to the floor. Senbetta, Elkanah Langat are the two that have really lost contact there on that section, and this is where they're going to have to really concentrate, because the potential is there for really fast times for them in these closing stages, but they're going to have to do it solo, and they're going to have to do it on tired, fatigued legs. 8 there is the Eritrean Filman. That is Simbu, and this is a big move now being made by Kibrutto. We've seen those tentative charges that he's made. He's still looking back, but that long loping stride has done real damage behind him now. It's whittled it down to 2. It's him and his teammate, the one that he's been chatting to, Daniel Kibet. Are they going to draw alongside? He wants him alongside. He wants a bit of help. But that was a super surge. Look at what he's done in just 4 or 5 minutes of running. Is it a winning break that he's made there? Titus Kibrutto, the 25-year-old from Kenya, the 2:05.22 man, the fastest in the field, 17 kilometers. Well, I think that was on the outward run. They're inside the last 10 kilometers now. 25 minutes of running remaining for these two Kenyans. Lots of little fidgety, twitchy mannerisms. The look over the left shoulder, always. The look at the left wristwatch. And the athlete behind him isn't the one you'd want to see in the rearview mirror. It is Simbu of Tanzania, who is absolutely deadly in a championship marathon situation in the closing stages. They are going to have to work together. And for that reason, Kibet draws alongside to give a hand. Great cheering from the mid-pack runners on the opposite side. What a great feeling that must be. It's 8 kilometers to go for these two Kenyans. So the contraflow ends, they move to a new section of the course, and he just can't help himself. Kibrutto just has to put in a metre, but immediately the look over the left shoulder as well. And that gap, it's not broken them, has it? It's still 5 or 6 seconds. He has to keep applying it, and he knows it. But it looks as though he's getting close to his limits as well, Kibrutto, in maintaining these surges. Looks at his watch, but he doesn't even look at it properly. It's just a gesture. Bottom right on the split screen, this is the women's leader. So it's a Kenyan double at the moment. This is Vivienne Kipligant, double champion, bidding for a hat-trick of victories, but she's lost that close contact with her pacemaker. And it has slowed, projecting to 2:21. So she's going through a bit of difficulty. So are the women behind her. She's been stride for stride. Pacemaker asking her to get alongside, get in his slipstream, and that's what she's done so far. But she's perhaps just going through a rough spell in this race. So that third quarter for the women, which we're still in, has been a slower one. The third quarter for the men, which we've just completed, was a good one. And that's because there's 7 of them together and only her now and the one pacemaker trying to help Vivienne Kipligant, trying to get her right back on his heel. So if she is struggling, she's the opposite to Kibrutto. She doesn't look over her shoulder, just keeps her eyes drilled on the shoulders of the pacemaker in front. Hers is a 10-second gap or thereabouts. But this isn't the best that she's run in the race, and she will be anxious to just try and maintain cadence and form. Looks pretty good sideways on. No tension in the shoulders or the jawline. So it's going to be a battle royal for second, third and fourth there. Back with the leading 2 in the men's race, Kibrutto and Kibet. 7 kilometres to go. And this is slightly unusual because this is Kibrutto slotting in. He's done all of the leading, literally all of it, for the past 50 minutes or so. And now Kibet decides, whether it's in collaboration or otherwise, I'm going to push on. Perhaps he can hear his teammates breathing. Perhaps he's thinking this will be his day. Sub 59-minute half marathon runner, a 2:06 marathon runner, winner in Istanbul. He ran that 2:06. They have slowed slightly, as you can see. They've drifted outside 3 minutes per kilometre, but it was a relatively slow section through that, the paths of that park. And it was where Kibrutto just decided to up the ante a bit. Still looking over the left shoulder. I think it's, we'll see. So these 2 are going away, and in the women's event it is also Kipligant going away, but not by much. Well, that's the chasing group, and they're struggling. They've fragmented their single. It looks like it's Simbu that's in clear third now, but that doesn't look like the body language of an athlete that's chasing. Looks like somebody that's a bit weary and trying to hold position. What's the gap? More than 10 seconds. Could be 20 seconds. The camera head-on foreshortens it a little bit. So it is Kenya 1 and 2, Simbu of Tanzania third. 2 different perspectives on the men's race as we look at it sideways on for the 2 leaders and the third place athlete from over his shoulder. Kibrutto does do a lot of looking over his shoulder. I think he may now be satisfied that they've got potentially a winning lead, but of course they can't both win unless they link arms across the finish line. It will be a duel between these two. They've been speaking a lot during the race. They probably know each other well. They may even be training partners, but there can only be one champion. It looks like it's going to come from Kenya unless Simbu can mount something spectacular in these last 20 minutes or so. And in the women's race, the gap is less than that. It's less than 10 seconds. They've got a little bit further to go. Vivienne Kipligant has led since the gun, tucked in on that pacemaker. She's looking back. That's the only time she tends to look back at the turns. I think it may be 15 or 20 seconds that she has over the chasing group. It's all of the leading seeds. Tusa of Ethiopia, Mekanen of Ethiopia, Cheptu of Kenya, and I think the only other athlete that was anywhere near that lead group was Biini of Ethiopia. So 2 Kenyans and 4 Ethiopians in the top 6 in the women's race, but it is the double champion, the 6 times marathon winner, who's perhaps re-establishing that winning habit, Vivian Kipligant, going well. It's drifted to outside 221. 221 is her lifetime best. She gave it a shot at 219. It was extravagant early on. And what's the gap? More than 20 seconds by the look of it. They're still sharing drinks bottles, so it's still very collaborative between Kibrutto and Kibet. They share the same sponsor, the same manager. I think they're in the same training group. Could come down to a sprint finish between these two, in which case you look at the track credentials and Kibrutto is pretty good, or he was. Surely it wouldn't come down to a sprint finish. They look very comfortable, the pair of them, stride for stride. Very, very similar running actions, very similar stride lengths, matching kit. And we have less than 20 minutes to run. They'll be seeing some familiar landmarks. You can see that balloon arch on the other side of the park there. So if you are a marathon runner of any level and you've got a bucket list, this Milan Marathon was the fastest men's marathon in the world last year. It is a personal best course for runners of all standards and a great way to see a classic city. Kibrutto, is he going again? They were nicely stride for stride and shoulder to shoulder, but that's not his favourite formation. He likes to be in front. To me, it looks as though Kibet is fresh enough to just cover this. Both 25 years of age, both experienced marathon runners. It used to be 25 in the 90s and early part of this century. 25 was the age when you first turned to the marathon, having exhausted cross-country and track potential. Now we see marathon runners emerging in their early 20s. These two have got a lot of racing under their belts, even though they're both only 25 years of age. I think they'll look left as they come round to check what the gap is. They'll see that it's probably 20 or 30 seconds. Kibet just confirming what he thinks the gap is, taking a look at his watch as well. Kibrutto, I don't think is going to get a personal best, but Kibet might. Just under a 2:07 runner. And this is that familiar section of park, but this time it's for the women's race at Vivienne Kipligant. It's a slower section of the race. So we go through 1:51. There's only about 16 minutes of running left. And it's a change in order again. Kibrutto now pushes on. So for whatever reason, either because they're trying to win or because they're just trying to help each other out, they're going single file when we watched for a while and they were stride for stride, which logically, if you're trying to key off each other, would be the side-by-side position that you would think they would favour. Because Kibrutto can just slipstream here. In the women's race, Vivienne Kipligant has been slipstreaming the pacemaker for the whole race. She should buy him a bottle of his favourite beverage this evening, because he has potentially taken her to a hat-trick of Telepass Milan Marathon titles. And this is the athlete in third in the men's race. He was fifth in the Tokyo Olympics, seventh in the Tokyo Olympics, fifth in the Rio Olympics. So a lot of racecraft there for Alphonse Simbu of Tanzania. Still looks pretty smooth. If he's had a bad patch, it was when that breakaway happened and he couldn't cover it. But I suspect he is fully 30 seconds back down the road. We're not going to perhaps get to check on that distance, but fascinating contest in between which of these two runners is going to take the title. I think it will be every man for himself in the closing stages, but they may help each other to beyond 40 kilometres. But we've got now barely 13, 14 minutes of running still to go. Titus Kibrutto, number 2, in second place. Daniel Kibrutto, number 9, in the lead, both for Kenya. The story of the race has been even splits. After a quite speedy opening 5 kilometres, the race then settled. The pacemakers exited the race early, and these two, I don't think have ever been outside the top 5 at any point. And gradually they prized their way clear as we came into the final quarter of the race. One of them's going to be the champion, one's going to be runner-up. Difference in prize money, the prospect of invitations to some of the Abbott World Marathon Majors events in the autumn of this year. Possibility maybe of Kenyan selection for the World Championships. I don't think that team has been finalised. It's the toughest team in the world to make a Kenyan men's or women's marathon team for a global championship. Commonwealth Games, which Kenya compete in, are in Birmingham in August. There's a marathon there as well. As between these two, there hasn't been a gap of more than 2 seconds at any point in the race. They've run it as a pair, they've broken away as a pair, they can't win it as a pair. And is that why Kibrutto is in front? Is that why Kibrutto suddenly doesn't look quite as comfortable in second place? Or is it his turn shortly to take on a kilometre? Guys on the pavement. Let's see just how long well, they're in running gear, so they're out on a training run. It has all the hallmarks of a stag do, doesn't it, on the pavement. They won't be able to keep up once they cross over this road. I think they're struggling to keep up anyway. Remember, these two are running at 3 minutes per kilometre. That's Simbu, very, very isolated now. Is safe probably in third. But I think just about running out of time to make any inroads on the leaders there. It's been another good run for him. Tanzania is a Commonwealth nation, so he may well, as a double Olympian, go for a World Championship in Oregon or a Commonwealth Games in Birmingham as his next marathon in the summer. But he's concentrating hard. He wasn't given a high-seeded number. He's number 10 on his back because there are plenty of runners that are quicker, but he just knows how to judge the pace, distribute his effort, and it's been a great race for him so far. Lots can still happen, but we're into the last 10 minutes of racing now. A little bit more racing to come. 21 minutes or thereabouts perhaps for Vivienne Kipligant, the leader in the women's event, and she has got back on the heels of the pacemaker. She was detached for a while. She's had good and bad spells, but throughout it all, she's been first. Even when the other 5 athletes have been right on her shoulder, this is the position that she has assumed. Like a Derny bike on a motorcycling velodrome. Right on the wheel of that pacemaker. And she's flowing again. If she had difficulties when she lost contact with the pacemaker briefly for a kilometre or two, she's come through those difficulties. Sweating now, the sun is out, the temperature's still only up to about 7 or 8 degrees, but that'll be a nice sign for her. 7 kilometres to go. She'll rarely do a training run of anything less than 7 kilometres. So she knows the body will hold her up and at a good speed. I don't think it's going to be a personal best. She's run 2:21.11. It's going to be outside that. The 2 course records that were set on that 5-lap race, the elite-only race a year ago, were also Italian all-comers records. So the fastest times ever seen in Italy for Vivienne Kipligant in the women's event, 2:19.35. But this has been classy, and she doesn't lose Milan marathons. Winner in 2018, winner in 2019. She's come back for the first time since then. Of course, we've had 2 pandemic cancellations, and just showing that she is the absolute master of this course. And the way that pacemaker, and I don't have his name, I've got the names of the pacemakers but not their individual numbers, but he's been absolutely outstanding for her in this one. Could be Cornelius Kipligant, but he's done a wonderful job for her. She hasn't really had to concentrate on too much else, so even when they've been queued up behind her in the women's race, well, that male runner there was a long way ahead of her previously. I think that's Antonio Lollo of Italy, and he's still heading for a decent time. He's still cruising for under 2 hours 25, but this is the significant development in the men's race. He just can't stop himself from looking behind, but he also can't stop himself from leading. It is Titus Kibrutto. The stride still long, and that gap has just appeared very suddenly. While we were tracking the women, he's put in another surge, and for the first time in the race, his fellow Kenyan Daniel Kibet has not responded. And he's only got to hold this together for another 5 or 6 minutes, and he's the champion. Potentially the biggest win of his career. Don't think he's ever won a marathon. Going way back to 2013, he was a bronze medalist in the World Youth Championships. That was at under 18 level. That was at 1,500 meters. The following year, he got the silver medal at the World Junior Championships in Eugene, where the World Senior Championships will be this year. And that was at the 3,000 meter steeplechase. He's been 4th in Rotterdam. He was 6th in Eldoret. So this is a big moment for him. If he can hold it together, no point looking at his watch. You've got to presume he can't go any quicker. But he's loping along, bouncing along. That's one of the differences that the new super shoes with the carbon fibre and the memory foam do to athletes. They protect and cushion the legs, so there's still springiness and still a long stride there available to athletes, and this is a guy that really does bounce along. He's got to stop himself looking back. That's a bad habit to acquire, because he's made his effort. All he can do now is concentrate on his own race. Just 5 minutes or so of running still to go. So good spectating support. I suspect the story of the race will be some irregular kilometres. I mean, that one where he got away just then has got to be quicker, but everybody, relatively speaking, is slowing down. So it may be a 3-minute kilometre when those in pursuit were running 3:04, 3:05. Just wonder if Kibet does get inspired, whether he can mount a final challenge here in the closing kilometre or two. They'll know each other's running very well. If they've trained together, they'll know respective strengths and weaknesses. If you train together all year round, some days you win, some days you lose, sometimes you lead the session, sometimes you struggle. So we'll know that Kibet won't roll over on this one, but he hasn't got long now to hold it together. Kibrutto of Kenya. It's a Kenyan men's leader, it's a Kenyan women's leader. The course records are going to stay intact. One could win the biggest race of his career, and one could win for the 3rd time on this course. In the women's event, Kipligant, don't think she's ever been beaten here. The champion in 2018 and 2019. She ran 2:22 when she won here 3 years ago. The last time it was held on this mass citywide course, and she could be something very, very similar. But for this man, it could be something that he's never experienced before, a major championship or a major marathon win. For the 3rd year in a row, it could be a Titus taking the title. This time Titus Kibrutto, and he's opening up still. That gap's now about 9 or 10 seconds. That's 3rd, and I don't think there's enough road left for Simbu of Tanzania to make any headway on 2nd place. The positions may now be set. The tension will be over whether that gap between 1st and 2nd can be closed, but he's now just a couple of minutes away from a possible victory. The finish line at the Porto Venezia edge of the park. Vivienne Kipligant has a bit further to run. She's still just under 20 minutes away from a possible victory for her, a repeat victory. So he's not going to set a personal best. That is 2:05.22. He'll be outside that, or is he? Is that 400 metres to go? Well, he's certainly accelerated. So you're joining us at the closing stages of the 2022 Telepass Milan Marathon. We've got a runaway leader now in the men's race. It is Titus Kibrutto of Kenya, the fastest man in the field, ahead of his teammate Daniel Kibet. Into the closing stages. Looks at his watch, but he doesn't need to look at his watch. It's heads up now for Titus Kibrutto. He is going to be the 3rd Titus in a row to win this one, but it's the biggest win of his life. Titus Kibrutto of Kenya is going to win. He's going to be just on 2:05, which is also going to be a lifetime best for him, thanks to the surges he made in the last quarter of the race. The winner is Titus Kibrutto of Kenya. 2nd place is going to go to Daniel Kibet. So I'm without pictures here as the first 2 come across the line. So apologies, I have no visual here. My monitor has gone blank. Third place athlete, when last we checked, was Alphonse Simbu of Tanzania. So I'm back with pictures, and it looks like Awani has given everything he can. First Italian on his debut, 2:08. That is a very good day's work. Race director Andrea Basso ready with a drink for him. And that may well secure him selection for Italy if he chooses at the marathon distance at the European Championships this year in Munich, or even the World Championships in Oregon. Only 100 and odd days away, but still time, and that will be a very positive first experience for him. I think that's a, I don't know what he was hoping for out of the race. He went off ambitiously, had a pacemaker to assist him, but that's a great debut for the Italian. Could give him a shot at the European title if he could replicate that sort of time and performance in the European Championships in Munich. Meanwhile, we're with the women's leader. We saw in the men's race that they accelerated notably. Kibrutto in the closing 10K brought him back into personal best contention when they were drifting out towards 2:06. I don't think Kipligant will mind if this is outside 2:22, because on this course in particular she's unstoppable. 3 runs, and if she holds this together, 3 victories. The women went through very, very quickly in the first half of the race, then it steadied up through the third quarter. And then she opened up without necessarily looking back. Quite different to the way that Kibrutto ran his race, where he was looking back constantly, a very hesitant champion. She's actually only really looked back at the pursuing group when she's gone round the turns. On 2:11, so we've we've seen this route run by the leading men. I think, actually, in overall terms, in the whole race, she won't be too far down the field, maybe top 20 or 30 finishers, something like that. We don't often fill those gaps in between the elite men and the elite women, but there won't be lots. There'll be very high standard athletes that have run quicker, men who have run quicker than this woman. So I wonder what her selection of next marathon will be. She's been a winner around the world, a winner in Mexico, Honolulu, Abu Dhabi, and here in Milan. So that's potentially 3 different continents she's won her marathon races on. It's a new era for women's marathon running. For so long, Paula Radcliffe, with that world record at 2:15, was minutes clear of any other woman. Now Bridget Kosgei has brought that time down, and suddenly the floodgates around 2:20 have really opened up. That's not the special time that it once was. Still outstanding. At one stage, it looked as though we were going to get 5 women under 2:20. But we're going to be following her all the way through to the finish line. Chicago was the race that she ran last autumn. She was 5th there in 2:29. The previous year, she pace made for Bridget Kosgei, her teammate, at the London Marathon. So she has experience of both of those 2 events, which take place in the autumn of this year. Just a little bit unsure of her footing there, wasn't she, across that cobbled section of the course. The other marathons that she's, well, her half marathons include a 3rd place in Copenhagen, 66.07, so she's got real good speed. That'll be the final drink that she takes on board. She's got 2.2 kilometers to run, and she's moving really well. There was only probably about a kilometre of the race where she lost touch with that pacemaker. She gets absolutely into his slipstream. He's done a lot of the work for her, but you can't downgrade how hard it's been for her to run at this speed relentlessly for so long. But she literally has run her own race. She hasn't worried whether she was clear or whether she had company directly behind her. She's just tried to maintain that same speed. Let's hope we see her back again next year. This race has re-established itself at its traditional date in March. It was in May last year on that multi-lapper, which she didn't run. It's the 20th edition, and she's going to have won 3 of them. So Vivienne Kipligant now with just about 1,500 metres, a metric mile still to run. The challenge that was expected to be mounted would have been predominantly from Rama Tusa of Ethiopia. She may well still be in 2nd place. The gap has grown so big we haven't seen what's happening between 2nd, 3rd and 4th women. That could be one of the closest contests of the day. There were big gaps between 1st, 2nd and 3rd men, between Kibrutto, Kibet and Simbu. Kenya, Tanzania. I haven't seen whether the pacemaker's been grabbing her drinks bottle for her. It's been clear enough that she's been able to get that herself, but he's done a good job in terms of timing, running the racing line, advising her when drink stations were coming up. She's only got 2 or 3 more turns still to go. A 2:21 time she ran was in Abu Dhabi in 2019, so I don't know how much she raced. She did a bit of pacemaking during the first lockdown year for Bridget Kosgei in London. She ran Chicago last year in 2:29, based in Kapsagat in Kenya, with training camp there. So this is the commercial part of the city. They're heading towards Porto Venezia. She's just getting instructions about how close the finish is, and that if she can raise a canter, it's just a couple of turns away. We're through 2:16 now. We did see the men's champion accelerate notably in the last 5 kilometres. 1 kilometre to go for her. Can she go under 2:20? 2:21.11 is her best. So the last quarter of this race, which might have a slight wind assistance, has certainly been a good one for both the men's and the women's podium places. That course record was an outstanding one last year for Haywood Gebrikettin. I don't know if you can call it a course record because it was on a 5-lapper. Being told, and the pacemakers being told how close they are to 2:20, and it looks as though the speed is quickening, and it has been a good last 5 kilometres for Kipligant. There you can see she's gone 7 seconds per kilometre quicker over the last 10 kilometres, and that's what's brought her back from 2:22 projected time down to something much closer to 2:20, and she'll take all the seconds she can get here. The pacemaker at some point will weave to one side and she'll have the finishing straight to herself. That's about 2 minutes away. Well, she's never broken 2:21, she's never broken 2:20. She said she would go for the course record, now 30 years of age. You can see that personal best goes back 3 years. It was another RCS event in Abu Dhabi just before the lockdown began in December of 2019, where she ran her personal best, and this will bookend, hopefully, the end of the pandemic with another very fast time for her. We're going to come down to the number of 100 metres to go signs. There's the first of them on the left-hand side in the distance. No, she can go any quicker than this. Really hard to raise a canter. So the pacemaker bids her farewell and good luck. She's on her own now for these last few 100 metres. .400 metres to go. So I think the course record is going to survive. The 2:19.35 is going to survive. But is Milan going to see another sub 2:20 clocking for the women? Last year's champion was only the one of 8 in the world in the whole of last year who broke 2:20. And this year's winner could be joining that club and could be putting down a marker and another notable indicator that if you want a personal best, you come to Milan. It's a fast course. She's absolutely sprinting now. Oh, it's going to be so close to 2:20. She'll see the clock ticking. It's been a wonderful run. She's going to be the champion again. Let's see what she's got over this last 100 metres. It looks like she's achingly close. Vivienne Kipligant is going to be the 3 times champion of the Telepass Milan Marathon. Is she going under 2:20? Oh, the clock above says 2:20.20. Well, let's wait for the official time on that one. She celebrates anyway. It was a wonderful run. It's a lifetime best for her. One of the fastest times ever seen in Italy. One of the fastest times in the world this year, and a personal best for her, and a 3rd victory in Milan. And she has gone to the well on that one, hasn't she? She's absolutely spent. Pacemaker jogs in. He did a superb job there. Takes the plaudits. I hope they all realise he's a pacemaker, not that he's jogging in the main event. Well, I suppose he is jogging in the main event. He's going to get a marathon finishing time out of it, and it's going to be under 225. Oh, she has a medal presentation ceremony, but she might need a moment just to regather her composure. She dug very deep there. And she has opened up a huge gap over second place. Remember, they were still with her until the three-quarter distance. Second and third women here. Doggy Anmut looks like she's just creeping through on the right-hand side, but she's in third. Getahun Tilahun of Ethiopia is going to take second with a salute. Anmut with a matching salute for third place. And those are tremendous times. Top three, all under 222.5. You can see they've absolutely given everything. Wow. And I think in the case of Getahun, she came from a long way back in the first half of the race. She wasn't in that leading 4 or 5. Her highest place was her finishing place there. Kipligant has recovered her composure now to celebrate with the Kenyan flag. There'll be an anthem to look forward to. Ethiopia second and third in the women's race. Well, a good day for Kenya, but second and third in that women's event with two athletes up 222.5. I think all of the women home so far have run personal bests by a significant amount, a couple of minutes in some cases. And these are good times by these Italian national and club level men under 224. We've still only had a couple of dozen finishes, if that. Absolutely exhausted, isn't she? So still only the first three women home that we've seen, and that means that the number 2 and 3 and 4 seeds who tried to match Kipligant have really paid a heavy price for it. Susa Mekkonen and Jeptu. Segai. Melisech Bayini Segai, the 226 runner. That's a personal best for her. I think that's our 4th place female. So that is 3 in a row for Ethiopia. They didn't have the winner, but they've had 2nd, 3rd and 4th place, all in big personal best times. And still, the number 2, 3 and 4 women haven't appeared, so they absolutely must have hit the wall. So some big gaps at this point in the field. There's still more than 7,000 finishers to come. They'll be finishing for the next couple of hours. This is still the elite part of the race. Anything under 2.5 hours is quality running. Just sprinting to get under 226 and celebrating. Sense that it was a personal best day, a little bit cool for spectating. Temperature now is still only between 7 and 8 degrees, but there's been no wind, no rain. So pretty much ideal marathon running conditions. This has been a real festival of running, as well as being an exercise and trying to be environmentally friendly as possible. There have been children's relays, we've had the school events. Been a corporate relay as well, and I think the new course is not a lot different to the one that was held in 2019, but it's been a very successful one, very scenic indeed, but flat and fast throughout. That was Alessandro Spanu of Italy finishing there, or he's just about to finish. The lifetime best of 2:30.44. Let's see what the clock says. There was a difference between the graphic clock and the finish line clock, and that's why he's celebrating. He's run a lifetime best by 3 minutes there. So personal best all the way down the field. Good work. And evidently a personal best behind him. We still haven't seen the 4th place woman. There'll be runners just around the corner that will know that they're potentially on for sub 2:30 for the first time, desperately trying to sprint. Those meters to go banners are a blessing and a curse, because you know exactly what's left and how long it's going to take you, but probably in the last few strides of a marathon it's very hard to go any quicker. And that was the number 2 seed finishing there, Rama Tusa of Ethiopia, 2:23 runner, finishing in 2:28. But she was running with that leading group for a long period of time, and it just fell away. Let's go to our medal presentation ceremony for our top 3 in the men's race. Simbu of Tanzania takes 3rd place. And it was a strong performance from him. I wonder if he'll be tempted for Tanzania by either the Summer Championship marathons, the World Championships, or the Commonwealth Games in August as his next marathon. He's had 2 top 7 finishes in the Olympic Games, and that showed today the way that he came through and held it together over the last third of the race.
Attenzione che faccio salire giustamente prima sul palco Elena Mosticardo, marketing manager di ASICS Italia, benvenuta, e faccio salire il secondo gradino del podio, quindi second place with a time of 2 hours, 5 minutes and 20 seconds, 2 ore, 5 minuti e 20 secondi. Voglio sentire un fortissimo applauso per Daniel Kipligant.
Second went to Daniel Kibet of Kenya. It's hard to see how he could have done any more. He ran a great race. It was just his teammate and fellow Kenyan who was just too strong in the closing stages. But great running for Kibet. Second place for him.
L'applauso ovviamente nel fondo diritto per il secondo classificato. Ora facciamo salire sul podio, voglio sentire ovviamente l'applauso fortissimo di tutti voi. Innanzitutto per Gabriele Benedetto, amministratore delegato di Telepass, benvenuto, grazie per essere con noi, che so tra l'altro che era anche corso quest'oggi, quindi ha partecipato attivamente ovviamente. E per la premiazione facciamo le congratulazioni e un applauso molto forte al primo gradino del podio.
I don't know that many people called Titus, but the winner of this event for the last 3 years has been called Titus. Titus Kibrutto, previous 2 years, and the biggest win of his life here for Titus Kibrutto of Kenya. Looked absolutely fantastic over the last 10 kilometres of that race. Looked over his shoulder a lot, but in the end there was nothing there to challenge him. Great win for him, winning the 2022 Telepass Milan Marathon. Information for the times, all of which were personal bests.
Io direi che siamo pronti anche per l'inno nazionale, the national anthem of the winner of the...
And good crowds, you can see in real time. We've still got plenty of runners approaching the finish line. That will continue. The race started 9 o'clock local time, will continue well into the afternoon. 7,000 runners, almost back to pre-pandemic levels, just a few hundred shy of the 2019 level. And if you're a marathon runner watching anywhere in the world, add this to your bucket list. It's a wonderful city, a flat, fast course, very scenic. Make a weekend of it. And as we reprise the top 10, great run by Ioane for Italy on his debut, 2:08:33. That gives him something to work off, and could make him a leading European challenger in a year when we have a European Championship marathon in Munich in the summer. And that was the winning moment, a lifetime best for Titus Kibrutto. Celebrates the best win of his life. It's the second largest charity fundraising marathon in the world, behind London per head. We're going to the women's awards presentation. It was bronze and silver for Ethiopia.
Del pubblico di Milano, l'Etiopia di nuovo protagonista su questo palco. E ora invece ritorna con noi con piacere sul palco.
Completely different kind of race that we saw in the women's events.
Per la premiazione del secondo
Same
premio
leader
del podio,
throughout, being challenged at different times
per la Telepass
until quite late in the
Milano
race, and then suddenly the gaps
Marathon,
opened up.
secondo posto con il tempo di 2 ore 22 minuti 19 secondi, with a time of 2 hours 22 minutes and 19 seconds. Premiamo dall'Etiopia
Tillahan's best was listed as 2:45. So to take 20 odd minutes off that, amazing.
L'applauso forte c'è, si sente per questa giornata splendida, per questi atleti fenomenali. Ed ora faccio salire con piacere sul palco Aldo Agostinelli, Chief Consumer and Marketing Officer
So
di
some
Telepass.
nice silverware to take home,
Grazie per
along
essere
with
qui con
the
noi.
memories and the check
Gatto è il premio da
and the 80
consegnare
legs.
all'atleta femminile che vince la 20ª edizione della Telepass
Just
Milano Marathon.
gingerly coming up on stage, the 3 times champion, absolutely gave everything. She'll need a bit of help getting up there, I think. There she goes. Vivienne Kipligant, the champion for the 3rd time since 2018 here in Milan. 2022 Telepass Milan Marathon champion for Kenya.
Premio consegnato di questo momento. E direi Marietto, se ci sei, siamo pronti con l'inno della prima classificata, quindi l'inno del Kenya.
And there's confirmation. It was only 1 second between Getahun and Darju Darji actually had a lifetime best listed as 2:29, so massive personal best for the two Ethiopians, and also a personal best for Vivian Kipligant. Great race. Vivian Kipligant, interchangeable use of second name by the Kenyan athletes.
Un urlo forte per il podio femminile della Milano Marathon, la Telepass Milano Marathon. Wait just a minute for the photo, please, for the women's podium.
And great quality to have, well, almost 7 athletes under 2:30 is a sign of great depth. And an opportunity in future years for people to come to Milan and run the sorts of times that will get them lifetime best, qualifying marks, entry into World Marathon major events.
Ce la fanno delle ragazze? No, ci sono io, dai, ci sono io. Foto ufficiale, foto diritto per la premiazione. Che bello ragazzi, che onore.
So the spectators have stayed with things very nicely. A really great sight, isn't that? To turn left, see the finishing site. We've got fireworks, we've got disco music. Great sight, great souvenir photo as they cross the finish line as well. Millions of pounds being raised for charity here as well. One of the greenest mass events in the world. And this is a little bit further back down the course. They've still got a little way to run. Moving along nicely. 20 years of Milan marathons, culminating in this 2022 Telepass Milan Marathon. The numbers are growing, the speed's getting quicker, the amount being raised for charity is getting quicker. Let's have a look at the winning moment for Titus Kibrutto, the champion of 2022, winning brilliantly the race of his life. Hope you've enjoyed coverage of the 2022 Telepass Milan Marathon as we look again at Vivienne Kipligant winning for the 3rd time, undefeated on this course. She gave everything and was rewarded with a personal best. From Milan and me, Jeff Whiteman, it's goodbye.
Molto bella che ci riguarda RDS, perché da un po' di tempo, ormai già da un po', siamo anche in televisione, canale 265 del digitale terrestre, ma in più all'interno della nostra app, che invito tutti a scaricare, l'app di RDS, c'è un tastino dove cliccare semplicemente per entrare nella... precisamente nella linea di start, ma siccome erano tantissimi, sono partiti da 1,5 km di là, quindi hanno allungato ancora di più.